Controllers are how we experience the game, so it's important for me to try to look at the different controllers and figure out how we got to the designs. Not a lot of people saw the last video, but in the last video we named the king of controller designs, and it came down to the Sony PlayStation style design and also the Xbox style design, which are very much the same design, except the analog and the D-pad are switched around here, as you can see. So we came to that conclusion. This is the king of designs. But it all had to get here by starting somewhere. And where it started is what I feel like is the most important controller ever made. So in this video, I'm gonna joke around a little bit, talk about a bunch of these old controllers, and we're gonna get to the bottom of what the most important controller ever made is, and then we can talk about it in the comments. Look at that ugly Activate Windows thing. Is this what your Windows 10 looks like? When you try to go and change your color scheme or your background, does it say, oh sorry, you gotta activate, we need this dark theme? You can go buy a retail CD key if you want to. It's gonna cost you over $100 typically, maybe a lot, maybe $150. And if you're buying Office, it's gonna be a lot more than that. Or you can do like I do and grab an OEM CD key. It's the exact same product when you buy an OEM key. It's just, this is the price that the big corporations and stuff pay when they buy them and put them on laptops or whatever, when they buy them for their offices. So everyone should get the same price, and that's why I always buy OEM keys. And I do it on whokeys.com. We have Windows 11, and you can also get Office. Pick the version you want. I'm gonna get Windows 10 Pro. By using coupon code TS25, you can get 25% off these prices here. So go ahead and put TS25 in here as your coupon code, hit apply, and then you can see we can get Windows 10 Pro for $14.85. Once you're finished, if you wanna access your key, you click on your name on the top right, click on User Center, and you'll see My Purchase Orders. Right here, you'll be able to view the keys that you've purchased just by clicking on View Keys and Codes. Then you will see your code right here. Just go ahead and copy this code, press Start, type Activate, and you'll see activation settings come up. Click on that. Then click Change Product Key. Right there, you can paste in your code and hit Next, and then you will be activated. It's very simple. And while you're on WhoKeys, be sure to check out some of their new stuff like their wireless mice and mechanical keyboards. All right, now to the regularly scheduled video. No matter what system you have these days, this is all dusty, you need a layout that ends up being like this. So whether you've got a Nintendo Switch, you have to have a layout that's like this. This is similar to the Xbox layout. If you've got a Nintendo Wii, there's the Wii controller, very similar, but more like the PlayStation layout. And then on PC, you can always grab an Xbox controller or a PlayStation controller, whichever you like. This is the controller that I use the most because we designed this, of course. I like the shape of it. It's a little bit better for my grip style. Plus the analog sticks are, in my opinion, slightly more satisfying than those on the Xbox controller. So the only time that I don't use this on my PC is when I need an internal gyroscope, in which case I grab this to play my Switch emulators and stuff like that, because it has the motion controls inside there that you can take advantage of. But otherwise, I always use this, which is derivative of the most important controller ever made. It all came down to this design. So by the way, we have these for sale on epicpants.com. I've been using this one a lot lately, so this one has a lot of Hollow Knight dust on it. But anyway, yeah, I really like these. They're wireless, and I really like the analog sticks on these better than the Xbox controller myself. So I take this over the Xbox controller. Plus, it's a lot less expensive. Way back in the day, like in the 80s, there was a handheld console called the Game & Watch. And this was like a little cheesy Nintendo thing that just had some LEDs that came on and off and wasn't really a full-on game console. But it had the first D-pad, just like we see here with the regular Nintendo controller. This is just a Nintendo controller. This was available in Japan before as the Famicom controller, which is the family computer controller. And it was a little bit different, a little more rounded edges, but Lance Barr designed everything for the United States. And Lance Barr really likes harsh edges. If you're not sure who Lance Barr is, take a look at your Nintendo Entertainment System, take a look at your Super Nintendo, take a look at a lot of the peripherals that came out. Lance Barr worked at Nintendo for 30 years, starting around this period here. So you'll see his industrial design style in just about everything. Now, a lot of the controllers were actually designed in cooperation with the video game developers, like Shigeru Miyamoto and his team would help work on these controllers so that they could work best with the games. But this is the industrial design of Lance Barr. And the D-pad is extremely important. This was the start of console gaming controllers. This D-pad changed everything. We didn't have to have a joystick. We didn't have to have the old school Atari, stuff. And with this, you could do everything you could do with a joystick or whatever, not quite on an analog level. This covered just about everything you needed to do with those old games. And then we had two buttons, and that was it. select and start. Some games use select as an extra button, but that's it. Nothing fancy. And then from this, we got all the way to here. But let's go to the next stop on the way, because I believe that is the most important controller ever made. The Super Famicom. This is the most important controller. This is the wrong controller, wait a second. The Super Famicom controller, there it is. Look at this beautiful controller. Still one of the best controllers on the planet. Has an amazing feel to it. Just adding this contour here completely changed the ergonomics and made it so much better to wield than the regular Nintendo controller. This regular Nintendo controller got really painful after a while, especially like on your ring finger and stuff. If you're gripping on your middle finger on the back there, these edges were not fun. This is a lot more fun. It's not as ergonomic as like the PlayStation controller, but this was a huge step in the right direction. So I'm gonna say this is the most important game controller ever made. Now we could argue that this probably was one of the most important game controllers ever made, but I don't think it was quite there yet. It had the D-pad, which was a huge step, but this has everything that we see in the modern controllers aside from analog. So let's cover it. We have our D-pad right here. We have start and select. Those are all standards on everything. These, we've got some fancy Xbox buttons and stuff like that, but those are all standards all the way up here. D-pad and start and select, or two buttons there in the middle for options or whatever, menu. And then we have 4 buttons right there on the face. Now they were colored for the European, I believe, markets, and also the Japanese markets. This is what we got in America. And while I do miss the really fun, multicolored scheme here of the Super Famicom controller, we have concave buttons here and convex buttons. So these indented buttons are really nice, because this is what you use for like mostly running and shooting in most games, and just being able to grab and feel where these different buttons are. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, these work almost the same, but I really like the feel of the American versions of the Super Nintendo controller, but I like the aesthetics a little bit better on this one, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, so we have our 4 buttons here, and then on top we have L and R. So this controller introduced the 4-button layout, added L and R, and gave us just a little bit more when it comes to ergonomics. And that's why I think this is the most important controller ever made. It's not my favorite controller ever made. It's one of the top, one of my top. You can really see the DNA of the Super Nintendo controller in just about everything that came after that, especially the controllers that wanted to be mindful of making sure that they worked with cross-platform games. So, Sony was really big on cross-platform games that were available for both the Sony and then in the future the Xbox, but also the Nintendo consoles. And it was really only Nintendo that decided to try new things, but they kept the same idea in the core. They were like, all right, let's try something else. Let's try a really weird design when it comes to like analog stick in the middle, and then like our D-pad, and then some 6 buttons over here. So this was a unique design that led to some other things, and I really liked it, but as far as cross-platform games go, it always made things weird on the Nintendo consoles because they didn't adhere to their own history when it came to like this design. There it is. This is what you gotta have. You gotta have this, and then anything else on top of that, that's great, but this is just a little bit weird. That this one's weird compared to the other ones. So there's what we have, and like after that we had this. And look what that is. Can you see what that is? Look at these two. Yep, they're definitely the same thing. Just this one's just got 1 extra L button. It's got 1 and 2 on the top, whereas this one just has the L and R. But it's the same controller with a better grip. Extremely comfortable. And PlayStation or Sony, they didn't bring the analog sticks to the party until the DualShock came out. This was after the Sega Saturn already had created an analog controller, so they didn't invent this technology. They didn't invent the idea of putting it on a controller, but this really became sort of a quintessential design as well. The N64 did come before that, so we had this controller to thank for really popularizing 3D gaming, gaming that navigates using the analog stick in a 3D world. This was a great controller as well, but just look, everywhere you look, this huge Logitech thing. What's this right in the middle? It's a Super Nintendo controller. That's what it is. It's got some extra buttons, like mode and vibration and that sort of thing. But really, that's what it is. See, as you can tell, these are the same controller. These exactly the same. No, this is different. So there you have it. I think the Super Nintendo controller, or the Super Famicom controller as I'm holding here in my hand, is the most important controller ever made. So tell me, what do you think the most important controller is? Is it this one? Was I wrong? Is the D-pad more important than the full-on configuration? Should these share the title? Let me know what you think in the comments. Next week, I'll show you what my favorite controller out of all of these is. If you want to see more controller videos, I know we didn't get a lot of hits on the last one because the algorithm just kind of buried it. But if you want to see if you want to see more videos on these controllers, let me know. Oh, I've even got some weird ones. Like this crazy looking thing, look at that. I've even got some weird ones. I've got some really weird ones if I go into my drawers and stuff. So let me know if you want more videos on these controllers. It's really important how we interface with our games, and just covering the history of all these things, in my opinion, is a lot of fun. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the comments.